What I have today is an introduction as much as anything. So I'm not really covering anything yet. We're not starting the course yet. I just want to be able to say to you, here's the big picture. I always like, in my own personal opinion, looking at, I've sat in a classroom for many, many years myself as a student on your end of the table. I always like to have a big picture on anything before I start it. And that way I can kind of knit things together. So I try, in this little thing I have for you today, the little first part of the slides, I have purposely built it as a big picture type thing. So what I have is just first to kind of chat about what exactly is it that we're doing in this course and why are we doing it. Microeconomics is really kind of you have to have an understanding of microeconomics in business. Anyone who's in business has to have some basic understanding. And this course is really designed to give you that basic understanding. And we say to ourselves, well, what exactly is, what's it called microeconomics? You know, there's a macroeconomics too. And what's microeconomics? Well, microeconomics really looks at the consumer or the business, okay? So it looks at the firm or the business. We use the word the firm. It looks at the firm or it looks at a customer. Now, I just want to focus on the customer for a second, okay? So the customer is you and me. You and me have a certain amount of money that we can buy things with. So let's assume that we have $10 in our pocket. That's the only money we have. And we're going out today and we're going to think about what we can do with that $10. It's burning a hole in our pocket. We need to be able to kind of think about it. Oh, okay. So I spy with my little eye something that I like that's $5. You spy with your little eye something that's $6, something different than I've looked at. Each of us is going to not necessarily want the same things. You're going to want something different and I'm going to want something different. You're going to want, the prices may be different on it. In other words, I'm going to consume or chew up a different amount of that $10 than you are. But it doesn't matter what we buy. The fact is that once we spend a portion of that money, we have less to spend on something else. So let's assume that you go and buy, I don't know, a cup of coffee at Tim Hortons. And let's assume the coffee is $2. So you have $8 left. And then you go down the street and you go over to the drugstore and you find that, okay, there's this wonderful magazine on the shelf that you wanted to get, but it's more than $8. And you say to yourself, I don't have a credit card or don't have anything like that. I only got $8 left in my pocket. The magazine, they're asking $10 for it. I can't buy it. So what you've done is, because you've made a choice in one purchase, you've more or less forced yourself not to be able to make the second purchase. You spend all your money on coffee, or you spend enough money on coffee that you don't have enough to buy the magazine. I, on the other hand, maybe spent $5 and I certainly can't buy the magazine, but I walk into the store and I find something there for $3 and I say, yeah, I can buy that. That's great. So, you know, all of us are constrained more or less on what we can buy based on how much money we have. And microeconomics, really from a consumer point of view, looks at this kind of quandary that we find ourselves in, that we're always forced to make choice. Because we buy something or do something, it prevents us from doing something else. So from a consumer point of view, we're looking at it from a choice. Now let's just switch to a small business from a microeconomics point of view. You're a small business and you think to yourself, okay, let's assume that your small business is a farm and you're busy growing carrots, okay? You have your whole farm filled up with carrots. You find out halfway through the year that really potatoes are a hot commodity this year and that carrots are really low in price, and you know, it wasn't really a good decision. It's not as if you can pull up all your carrots and start over again. You know, you've invested time and energy into this product, carrots, and as a result, you can't grow potatoes. You know, you've only got so much farmland, so you're limited with regards to your resources as a small business to be able to make choices with regards to what products you're going to make. So because you've made carrots, you can't make the potatoes. And because you can't make the potatoes, you're not going to make as much money. So be it individuals or be it businesses, there's always choices to be made, and there's always trade-offs whenever we make a choice. The goal, assuming it be a business or you, is to maximize the benefit. We want to squeeze the most out of that $10 we have, or squeeze the most out of the land that we have as a farmer. So we're always thinking about, is this the best choice for me? Or is this the best choice for my business? And if you make that choice, it limits your ability to make other choices. So this trade-off. And this has created a neat little, I'll call it a philosophical type of thing, but it really is the crux of what microeconomics looks at. It looks at, what is it people make those decisions? What makes them prefer one thing over something else? Or what are the actual costs of making one decision over another else? So over the course of this text and this course, this is really what we're looking at, is this decision making that we as consumers or we as small business people are making, and what impacts it has, and what are some of the tools, I suppose, that we can use in order to make better decisions. Okay, so that's really what the course is looking at in the big picture, and it's really involved decision making. Now, if we're a business, if we look at it from a business point of view, all of the businesses together that are in our country or in our world or in our town or in our province, the scale is flexible. But let's assume that all of the business within the period of the area of study that we're looking at, those businesses together make up what's called the macro economy. In other words, the big picture of the economy. Our study is really looking at the micro. Why do people make, or why do businesses make the decisions they make? So from a micro point of view, for a business, we really need to think about three basic things. What are we going to produce? How are we going to produce it? And who gets what's produced? How do we determine? So if we're a company, if we're that potato farm or the carrot farm or a farmer, let's say, we're going to ask ourselves, well, what are we going to produce? Are we going to produce carrots, potatoes, onions, whatever? So we as a business have to make those decisions. How are we going to produce them? I guess we could think about it in terms of, do we get people in to plant them, or do we use big machines to plant them? Do we water them, or do we just let the rain take care of it? These are what we mean by how are we going to produce it. And who gets what produced? How do we determine how we're going to sell this product to people? Are we going to, if more people are wanting to buy from us than we have product for, we got to make some choice in terms of who gets it. And what basis do we use to make it? Do we play favorites and say, I don't like you, I'm not giving you any, or I like you, I'm going to give you a lot? Or do we use a system of price where we say, okay, I'm going to offer this up for X amount of price. Whoever's willing to pay that price is going to get it. That's the decision-making tool in terms of how we make the decision with regards to who gets what's produced. Now, that's the individual firm. We could think of the big economy, too, and a little bit of macro. And our economy works the same way. As an economy, we got to think about, what is our economy going to produce? If you're Newfoundland, for example, we think that's the frame of reference that we'll use. What are we going to produce? Oil and gas. Okay, that's one of the things that we're going to produce. How are we going to produce it? Are we going to use giant offshore platforms? Are we going to use floating platforms, gravity-based platforms? And who gets what's produced? Where are we going to sell it to? And on what basis are we going to make the decision of who gets it and who don't? Normally, price is a real determiner in our what's called the free market. Price allows us to determine who gets it, because he who offers the most money is the one who gets the product. We also think about this issue of trade-offs again, and whenever we think of trade-offs, we're really looking at a way to make, when we make a decision, we're giving something up when we make that decision. If you spend your $2 on the coffee, you only have $8 left. That means you can't make a decision to buy the book. And companies, likewise, companies say, okay, look, if I only have a certain amount of resources, I have people that work for me, I have buildings, I have, capacity in the factory, whatever. If I choose to make this product, I can't make that product. Right now, for example, automobiles, very difficult to buy a car now because there's not very many being produced because there's a limited number of microchips that are out there in order to put in the vehicles. So the car companies have reduced production by a considerable amount. It's very difficult to get a car now. So again, scarce resources, microchips, are causing problems in the supply chain, and we have unlimited wants. There's all kinds of people wanting to buy cars. There's huge pent-up demand for buying cars. The car dealerships or the quad dealerships or any toys that you can imagine right now. It's very difficult because of COVID to get those toys produced, yet there's a huge demand for them. We call this trade-off in microeconomics, and something we're going to look at in a fair amount of detail. We call this trade-off where we say, okay, if we produce one thing, we can't produce something else, or we have certain limits put on it. We call that opportunity cost. I'll give you an example of how opportunity cost for yourselves. You're here set today listening to me, and some of you might be, at this point yawning. Some of you might be thinking, I should really get a job. So you're thinking about, what else could I do besides be here, right? So because you're here sat down at this, you can't do something else. You can't go out and play with the dog, or you can't go get a job or something like that. And that's what we mean by opportunity cost. What is it you give up in order to do what you're doing now? So you think about it from an economic point of view. If you're sat in this class now, you say, well, tuition at the college is fairly inexpensive. Okay, let's assume it is. But really, is it? Because if you weren't at college now, you could be out working. And let's assume that you're only going to make $15 an hour if you're out, okay? So that means when you're in this class for an hour, you could have been working. So you gave up $15 worth of pay in order to come to this class. So really, this class is costing you $15 plus your tuition to come to. That's what we call opportunity cost. You say, well, it's a phantom cost. I'm not working. I didn't make the money, but you could have. So when we talk about opportunity cost in our decision making, we really need to think about what are we giving up whenever we make a choice. And companies are always concerned about opportunity cost, even though it doesn't show up on their financial statements. And when we look at that opportunity cost and this idea of choice, we're going to be looking at this course. We're going to be looking at these things really in this course. We're going to be looking at something called the factors of production, which is all the stuff that goes into making stuff. So we got land, which is natural resources. We got labor, which is people that actually do something with those natural resources to get them out of the ground or to get them out of the ocean or to get them out of whatever. Capital, which is the dollars, so the equipment, for example, that's used to get that out. And entrepreneurship, someone with a bright idea. Entrepreneurship is really, sometimes we call it enterprise as opposed to entrepreneurship, but it's someone with the idea of taking land, labor, capital in order to make money out of it. So we're going to be looking at those. We're going to look at the concept of supply and demand and how that works. And in marketing, for example, we've already looked at that concept a little bit. We're going to be looking at it a little bit more. And we're going to be looking at this idea of the limits of production or production possibilities, and what are some of the things that limit how much companies can produce. Price is a really good way. We talked about this idea of who gets what is produced. And price is a really good tool because price allows us to really figure out who can afford to buy the things we make or how much I can buy of a given product. So price is a really good way of helping us figure out who gets what. But there are other issues that influence people's decision on whether they want to buy or not. And there's cultural issues, social issues, personal issues, psychological issues. Let's say, for example, that I'm out on a limb now, but Michael Kors. Michael Kors is a designer. I know that. And he makes handbags. And if you wanted a Michael Kors, you like the Michael Kors handbags and you wanted to buy a handbag, well, you know, the idea that got that MK on it, it has a certain amount of cachet to it, you might say, yeah, I want that. And I don't care what the price is, I'm going to buy it. So you're much more willing to pay for it than I would be, for example, because I'm not interested in Michael Kors handbags. Now, something else that I'm really interested in that you're not interested in, maybe I'd put a lot of money into it or be willing to put a lot of money into it, and you think you're nuts. But anyway, it satisfies my needs. So there's other things that influence people's decision-making with regards to the products they buy other than price. And we're going to look at some of those things as we go along. And we're going to look at this issue of something called utility. How much utility you get out of it. And you might have a great deal of utility for a Michael Kors handbag, whereas I may not. And different people will value certain things more than others, and we're going to make decisions with regards to what we buy differently because of that. So overall, here's the kind of the plan of attack for the course, okay? Where this course is really three major components to it. We're looking at, in the first couple of, well, the first 3 weeks really, we're looking at this issue of economic theory, general economic theory, basically the stuff that we've talked about here today. The issue of something called the economic problem, which is this limited amount of resources and a limited amount of money to buy the products that we want. So because we have a limited amount, we have to make choice. And because we make choice, we're not necessarily happy because we got to give something up in order to get something else. That choice is going to influence our demand for products. So we're going to have this issue of demand and how companies or businesses are going to respond to that demand with the amount they supply. So we're going to look at this interaction between supply and demand and how that influences price, or how price influences supply and demand. The second part is we're going to look at some theories of what's called price theory, which is really looking at how sensitive we are to price, okay? How sensitive are we in terms of our purchasing? We're going to look at something called elasticity, again, something covered in marketing. But elasticity is an important concept because it means that we are very sensitive on price on certain things we buy. In other words, if the price of it goes up, we're going to buy a lot less of it. Whereas on other things, we're willing to pay. We don't care if the price goes up. We got to buy it. Like gas for your car, right? Your car might be a gas guzzler, but because of the fact that you own the car and you don't want to sell it, you're probably going to, and you drive just as far, you're going to have to buy just as much gas anyway. So your demand for it is not elastic, in other words. We're also looking at consumer demand, which is the most interesting chapter because, again, it relates to that issue of what you want versus what I want. What do you value? What do I value? And at what point do I value something less if I get more and more of it? So if I really like vanilla ice cream, for example, I might be willing to pay a lot of money for that first scoop. But what if I got a second scoop? How much will I be willing to pay for that? Or third, or fourth, or fifth, or sixth? So we're looking at this idea of how consumer demand may be affected by how much the consumer has of the given item. And we're also looking at short and long run costs. If you're a producer, and again, this is from a small business point of view, if you're producing stuff, what are your costs? And how is that going to affect how much you make and how much price you're going to charge for something? And likewise, in long run, what are the implications of long run? The final section looks at the different types of markets that you find yourselves in. Perfectly competitive markets means you got lots of buyers and lots of sellers, all selling something very similar. What are the implications of that to the price, supply, and demand exchange? In a monopoly, you have one seller and lots of buyers. What are the implications of that in terms of the price and the supply and demand exchange? And then we got this final issue of imperfect competition. This is where we really don't have a monopoly, nor do we have a perfectly competitive market. We have something in between. What are the implications of that? That's really the course in a nutshell there. as I said, here is the textbook for it, even though the graphic I have up is for macro when it should be micro, but it is micro. The publisher has since fixed that. I haven't. But this is the textbook. And as I say, that textbook's been around for a while. It's in 10th edition now, and I know the bookstore has the 10th edition, the college tech bookstore. I have here personally the 9th edition. I'm not too concerned about the editions, whether it be the 8th, 9th, or 10th, that works fine. I just want you to make sure you have it. It's a pretty good book. It reads well. There's lots of good examples in it. So I strongly encourage you to get that at early convenience. In terms of how the course is evaluated, we're meeting for class, so there is a participation mark of 5%. And we got 4 assignments. Now, these assignments, how are these done? This year I'm revising the assignments. So we got 4 of them. They're handed out at various times. And when I get to the next slide, I'll show you where the various times are. Usually all they are is really questions that you'll find either like in the book or in the book. Okay? There's a midterm exam with 30%. That's mid-October, the 18th, I believe, or 19th is the week of the exams. I don't know what the exact date of the exam is yet. DL is going to determine that. Last year we had a little bit of a problem. This is evolving, so I don't know where we had some people in the course who were DL and some who are not. I don't know what we got here in this particular course yet. It's not all firmed up. But there will be a midterm during the midterm period, and it is to be determined when. We are intending to have exams written on campus this year. Also, I'll give you a heads up there. I'm still waiting for more direction on that myself. So other than to say what I just said, I won't go any further than that on it. The final exam is during the final exam period. It's worth 45. So it's a comprehensive type exam. Add it all together, and that comes up to 100%. So we got 4 assignments, the midterm and the final. The assignments aren't long assignments. In terms of the course schedule, here we go with it. We're going to be looking at next week in week 1. We're going to be looking at this economic problem. And in week 2, we're going to be looking at supply and demand. And there's a couple of chapters of material there. So that's going to stretch into week 3 as well. And I will, on Monday, I will have that assignment ready for you. And you can kind of do it as we go along. So it's due on the 27th. This year, I've done something a little bit different too. I've made assignments due on Mondays. The reason is I always had them on Fridays. That don't make any sense because nobody got it done. And they always, so basically I said, look, passing it on Monday is fine. So I said this year, let's just formalize that. So there we are with the first assignment. The second assignment is in October 18th, the middle of October, around the midterm. The third assignment is around the 8th of November, and the final one is December 6th. I'm not, as you know from last year, I'm not that sticky on dates of the assignment. I need it in around that time, but if you can't get it done on that day, I'm not going to have any problems with that. You know, if you can't get it done until 3 weeks after that, yeah. But these are dates that are roundabouts, I'll call them, that I would like it. The assignments will not be so taxing that you're going to need extra amount of time to do them. So as I say, as we go along, you'll have the assignment before we get to the material covered. I will have you the assignment so you can kind of do it as we go along. So that is the assignments. The midterm, you will see the midterm exam is mid-October. It is the first 5 chapters. So effectively, it's this material here, and it's multiple choice and short answer. So it's a 70-30 split. I will have a detailed what's on the midterm as I've done last year. So I'll have a detail on that. The final exam is comprehensive, meaning it covers everything. The reason is really that theory that we do in the first few chapters are the basis for the rest of the course. So it's reiterated there. 2 hours in duration, 60 multiple choice, and Short answer questions worth 40. I figure that's about 4 short answer questions. That involves workout. As I said to you, right now the plan is that those exams are to be written on the campus. That is the plan. Fortunately, you guys know where to find me. So if you call that number, you're going to get a voicemail because I don't have a telephone hooked to my computer, but I get an email based on the voicemail that says call you. That's how that works. And I'm always checking my email. I'm sat here every day, so there's no excuse for me to be any longer than a day getting back to you. Unless you email me on the weekends, then it'll be the Monday. Okay, so I guarantee you, unless I get run over by a truck, I will get back to you ASAP. Okay, so that's basically what I wanted to do today. Next week, we're going to be looking at Chapter 1. And so that is what we'll be doing. And with regards to how I'm going to go about teaching this course, we have scheduled classes for economics on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, okay? The Monday class is 8:30. Now, it's a 2-hour long class. There's no reason, except for the midterm, to have 2 hours of class. It's just too long. So I'm not going to start that class until 9 a.m., okay? 9 a.m., and generally we'll be cleaning up around 10. And the other ones are 2:30s, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. My goal is to complete the material for the week as per the schedule I just laid out to you. And once we've completed the material for the week, then that is what we will be covering for that week. So, you know, I'm going to start the week, get through the material for that week. And once we're through that material, the rest of the time you can work on your assignments and the like.